Let us officially open and welcome to today's Lunch and Learn session, where we're really excited to welcome our guests. We've got Tom Jackson, who's a head of operations at Countess of Chester NHS Foundation Trust, and we're also welcoming Carl Davies, who's solutions director at TeleTracking. And this session is really going to be focusing on capacity management and patient flow. And what we think is important as a network is that we bring to you all areas of improvement around operational delivery, and where particularly NHS trusts have worked with partners to help improve patient flow, improve quality and safety of care, and look at real cultural change around operational delivery. So really big thank you to our guests, who I'm going to hand over to very shortly, but not just yet. So hopefully you'll have an interactive session. These sessions work as well as much we engage with each other. So I've said hello. Everyone hopefully knows who I am. If not, I'm the founder and chair of Proud2bOps, Emma Challenge Rasool. And if you do follow us on what is now called X, LinkedIn, we have our website. Please do head over there, find out more, and also tag us in, and let's keep spreading operational excellence across the country. What's important for all of our sessions, and these sessions are as good as however much we choose to interact in them, so please do feel free and have a voice in this space, and please do uphold our values as a network. So we work really hard as a network to maintain safety, be supportive in this space, and to allow each other to have a voice and respect that voice. We want you to be curious over the next 45 minutes. We want you to ask questions. We want you to feel brave enough and safe enough to ask questions. And if you need a little bit of support, please do also pop it in the chat box and we'll help where we can. But we do like to really engage in conversation, and that's what makes these sessions a success. So please do get involved. This is about celebrating and recognising the work that our operational peers and colleagues are delivering day in, day out, and sharing that where through innovations and working with others, experts in their area, can really improve patient care, but importantly also improve people's working lives. So you all who are in these roles actively delivering day in, day out, boots on the ground, 365 days a year. So please do take these and embrace the learning in these sessions and be curious throughout. Anyone who has just joined, we do encourage you to pop your cameras on, please. It helps our guests interact and engage with you, and it also helps them assess how what they're sharing is landing and where we've got some questions of curiosity that's going to come into the room. Just to update you all, we continue to spread our operational movement across the country. We're now well over 1,500 members at a very senior operational management level, and then we're in the thousands when we're connecting our aspiring senior operational managers as well. So please do continue to support the movement of Proud2bOps. Get involved, share, learn, connect. It's what makes this network a success. So please continue to do that, and through our values and behaviours. If you have got areas of success, examples of change, no matter how big, how small, please do get in touch with us and help share and celebrate some of the work that you're all doing in your own organisations. You might not be leading it yourself, but you might want to shine a spotlight and encourage someone in your operational team to share their work. Please use that QR code, and we're also going to pop this slide in the chat box so you can go back as well. The more that you come forward and share, the more that we all learn together. Also coming up over the next few months is we've got a great webinar series starting this Wednesday, which is Proud2bOps does data and information. We've got 4 webinars, live webinars, that are taking place in April, May, June and July. These are not to be missed, and these are very sought after sessions where we've already done some tasters and the response has been fantastic. So please do, if you wish to get involved in these Proud2bOps does data and information. All the information is available on our website, and we've also sent all of this information out to our members. If there's any issues or concerns, please do get in touch with us and we'll try our best to respond to that. We're also got some upcoming sessions on demystifying finance, particularly through the lens of operational delivery. And again, we're going to make those all available to you who are members of the network and where relevant, your operational teams as well. And then our next two in-person events are coming up. We've got one in May that is specifically for development of ops managers, and that's a smaller in-person event. And then in November, we will be holding our Proud2bOps annual Congress. And this year, you'll be pleased to know we're doing Proud2bOps Awards as part of that as well. Last year, we attracted just under 250 people at the event, and we're really looking forward to another successful Congress this year as well. So that's what's coming up. But today's session, Lunch and Learn session. So this session is really going to hear some of the insights, some of the challenges, some of the successes and the impact that working through partnership and in collaboration with digital innovations, solutions and partners, you can make a real difference to managing capacity and improving patient flow. We've got Tom Jackson, who's Head of Operations from Countess and Chester, who's joining us, and also Carl Davies, who's the Solutions Director in TeleTracking. And again, they're going to share some insight now, and then we're going to go into some reflections, feedback and Q&A. So may I please hand over and welcome our guests, Tom and Carl, and please feel free to do next slide for myself. Over to you.
Thanks, Emma. Appreciate everyone's time. Tom, do you just want to give a bit of background on yourself and the organisation first?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone, and really appreciate everyone's time. So thank you. So my name is Tom Jackson. I'm the Head of Operations at the Countess of Chester. For those who don't know the hospital that well, we're a kind of a mid-sized DGH, 500 odd beds, around 250 ED attendances a year as an acute trust. I oversee kind of our patient flow agenda, more directly oversee our coordination centre, and also support kind of our daily rhythm, grip, and operational flow, and with some specific work with our kind of UTC, ED and STEC operations as well.
Great, thanks, Tom. And I'm Carl Davies. I'm Solutions Director at TeleTracking, but before I joined TeleTracking about 2 years ago, I was a clinician by background, worked at senior operational and strategic roles across providers and into system level ICBs, ICSs, and yeah, joined TeleTracking about 2 years ago because of the potential impact of the technology. So just to talk through some of that. Emma, next slide, please. So just to give you a big background before you hear all the stuff on the work that Tom's been doing and working with Dan and in partnership and the great work that's happened there, just to give you a little bit of background on Tele. We've been around for around 30 years, 35 years, I think, in fact, and we're specifically focused on the kind of logistics and the operational performance of organisations and how that's supporting the technologies. We have a range of individual products, whether that's access into hospital, referral management, the movement of patients across their journey within the organisation, within the hospital, all of the support workflows around portering, bed management, discharge process, all of those things. And then we can join those all together and offer them at a solution level where we provide care coordination centres. And you may have seen some of the pictures of the care coordination centres that hold the central site team and house them. And then often we add in wider solutions to give visibility across more broad parts of the system, so acutes and community providers can work in partnership, share visibility across the system so they understand the potential opportunity for capacity. What I think is really important, so the other distinguishing factor of what we try and do, the majority, myself being an NHS by background, is echoed throughout the organisation. 90% of the team have a strong kind of NHS operational clinical background. They've lived and breathed this on the ground, and we focus very much on people and partnership. So part of the focus of what we're trying to do here from our perspective is really emphasise technology is fantastic with lots of different detail and granular levels of data that can help drive massive amounts of insight. But we also do that in partnership, and that becomes a real focus of our work to help make sure we drive most of the value out of the system. Next slide, please. So what we try and do is think about the various steps across the system and take what would traditionally be maybe just visibility and try and make smart systems that give real insight across the whole of the hospital and beyond. And so what we look at, if you think about how in traditional systems we may have to run various different parts of the workflows in a linear process where we must wait for one bit to finish and be communicated onwards. What the platform does is try and give full visibility in real time of all of those different workflows happening concurrently, improve them where we can, streamline them, and then if we can, make them automated. So as an example of that, you've got the Dropbox feature, which is the patient wears a small badge. At the end of their journey, they will then take that badge off, you'll drop that in the box. That will automatically discharge a patient from the system. It will alert the bed cleaning team that that bed is now dirty, requires a clean, the level of clean required. And many of the workflows can be kind of automated in a similar way. So you're not reliant on people to kind of coordinate that, and that frees up some of that time. What it also does is much of the system, because given full visibility of all the different traditional data points and far more novel data points that wouldn't traditionally be captured, it stops people chasing information around the system. So you're giving time back to operational or clinical staff who would normally have to chase a lot of the information around on telephone calls, emails, whatever that may be, physically chasing that information down across the system. You give it at fingertips in real time as all of those different bits of information change across the system. You're also then able to support that with centralized visibility. So the coordination center might have more strategic level data as well as the granular kind of operational level data, so they can see all of those individual workflows and enable you to house all of the kind of various different individuals that maybe play a role in leading those teams across the organization. And then at operational level, you get a series of kind of smart dashboards, intelligent dashboards that will give all of that level of detail around the individual patient metrics, where they are in their journey, what's required, what's outstanding, the discharge process, all of those things. So bringing that all together gives some real depth to the insight that we can drive from that data. If we can just go to the next slide. Thank you. And so I'm sure we all have been familiar with this. A lot of the information around patient flow and where they are in that journey or the patient's journey itself is usually captured by chasing that information around either physically with paper, pen, and that requires an awful lot of movement of people and time just to get information that often when it does arrive is out of date, out of time, potentially inaccurate. And so by actually finding ways to capture that data, we can essentially give real-time information. And if you think about all of the different contacts that happen across those patients' journeys on a daily basis across all those patients, there are things happening operationally that will help if you have insight into making more effective decisions for that patient's journey, and then certainly in terms of coordinating your discharge and your patient flow, so you can relieve the pressure at the front door and you can enable discharge at the back end. So I'm going to hand over to Tom, who will talk about the real-time example, real life example of what we've been doing there. And what we'll say, credit to Tom, who's been fantastic in terms of trying to create some focus. The technology is nothing without the leadership internally and the people and the partnership. Tom and Dan have done some great work together. Dan, who's one of our account managers, so looking at how they can kind of coordinate various different focused projects using the data that's available and drive improvement. So I'll hand you over to Tom.
Thank you. And probably next slide, Emma, if that's okay. So just as a bit of background, I think what's probably interesting about our story is that we were Countess was one of the first organizations nationally to put in what you might describe as one of the fuller deployments of teletracking. When I came into post 12 months ago, so therefore what we realize is that it needs to be a bit revitalized, a bit optimized. So actually this isn't about putting a brand new system in and doing that process really well. This is about actually utilizing current tools and systems you might currently already have in place, and how we have optimized and really brought some focus to bear on that to get some value to the clinical teams, to staff, and to the patients at the front door. So now I don't know how many people are close to kind of bed flow, electronic bed capacity management systems, etc., but those first two bullet points on this slide, you would expect any EBCMS to efficiently manage with ease kind of the core basics transactional elements of a system. So those sorts of things like, this patient needs to move from your cardiology ward to respiratory ward, or from AMU up, or ED putting bed requests on promptly. We need to be able to handle the portering elements of that as well, so it's all well integrated, and then also being able to do the bed cleaning side of things as well, and then also all our primary care referrals come in. Now there are several different systems that do that. This obviously system aggregates them all under one roof, and does it all in my opinion relatively well. From an NHS perspective, it seems to work, and the clinical teams find it easy enough to use that the value that they gather them is well worth them using it. What you have to do is get that critical mass to say, actually, all bed requests need to go on the system, all portering requests need to go on the system. As soon as you have people using, manually ringing up the portering team or the coordination center, you start really getting into hot water. So you'd expect that to happen. That's kind of, the foundation, and it does. It also does a lot of our equipment tracking. And kind of the lead for our EBME team, famous phrase is, you go and find the kit, you don't have to go and look for the kit. So for example, if you need kind of 3 portable CT or ultrasound scanners, then actually, maybe you just need 2 spread between 3 wards rather than 3 between 3 wards, because actually exactly where they are at all times, and you can track them quite effectively as well. Now, I won't talk too much about those things, because I think what's more interesting is then the value you get once you have a system like that in place, and how that works, and also how we've then worked with TeleTracking to improve, and what structure we put in place to kind of improve the system and the focus around it. So in my role, and for anyone who's kind of chaired bed capacity management meetings, or set up when the pressure gets high and you've hit Opal 4 and the ambulances are queuing, you've really got to understand what your flow and capacity picture looks like for the day, what's normal, what's not normal. And I'll go on to the next 3 slides, have some screenshots of some dashboards just to illustrate that. But then after you've got that what's normal picture, you then have to go kind of, what actions do you have to take once the pressure increases? And I'm kind of worked in ED ops for 5 years, kind of 6 years prior to this role. And the focus has always been, front door, ambulance offloads, etc. But then when you start looking at kind of wider across the whole adult core bed base, that you're bombarded with questions of, where's the problem and what do I need to do to support that, and how do I do that efficiently? And I'm sure everyone, if you're ops, maybe we've been walking around wards and we've asked clinicians questions and gone kind of, any more discharges for the today? Can we move any of the discharges for tomorrow to today? Can we prep them? Those sorts of things. But actually, you've always queried how efficient you are with those questions, and is that a good use of your time as well? And secondly, it's, as the pressure increases, how do you bring those people in an efficient way? So, if you've got an extra 5 patients waiting admission at 8 o'clock in the morning in ED, what do you do differently? If you've got another 5 on top of that, what do you do differently? And how do you iteratively improve or iteratively increase your capacity to support that pressure? Is always a query for me. And so again, a couple of these slides that coming on will illustrate how we can then identify which areas and where the blockages are. And then that third thing around, ignoring the live picture, but actually historically, can we look at historical data and say, this is how we're performing from a flow perspective? And that might be from an internal ED perspective, that might be from some of our assessment areas, or that might be, as usual, from the ward process perspective. And what are some key KPIs to do that as well? And how do we consistently share that information? Next slide, please, Emma. So this is kind of an absolute Bible that we use day to day. So it's a live dashboard that is up at the coordination center at various screens around the organization. And that gives us an overall kind of highlight picture of flow for the day. So if I just talk kind of from left to right, we've got all of our bed requests in on the system there on the left-hand side, and any allocated and imminent moves. We've got our discharge lounge throughput throughout the day, how many medical outliers that we've got in the organization, which obviously goes up and down. Discharges for yesterday, which is integral when you come in at 8 o'clock in the morning and people go kind of, what went wrong? It's like, well, that's, that's the start of that conversation. And then discharges since midnight as well. We've got a census by unit of every single ward as well. And there's so likes of ward 52 at the top there, 28 out of 28. As you can see, a lot of our beds are full. We're at 95+% occupancy levels. But also you can see that +0, -0, or further down, you can see kind of different pluses and zeros. That shows the incoming and outcoming patients from all of those beds as well. So you can start getting a picture of your overall flow. More importantly, slide to right of that is all of our pending confirmed discharges broken down by ward, and also all of our referrals to the discharge lounge go via TeleTracking as well. So we can quickly see, actually what is our usage of the discharge lounge as well that day? What is it going to look like? And actually we've got 6 pending discharges, but only 2 are referred to the discharge lounge, and 12 confirmed, but only 5 of those are referred to the discharge lounge. And we've also got our pending confirmed discharges across our SDEC unit as well. So, when that area starts getting busy, we can start working out what our admission profile looks like as well. And then further on the right-hand side, we've got our patient movement performance. So that's all of our portering and bed turnaround team. So our cleaning team turnaround times. So they tend to be relatively good. But again, once that starts moving in the wrong direction, there's a separate dashboard that you can go to, and you can look at all the outstanding jobs, and you can have a conversation directly with those teams. If you can just press the next slide 3 times, Emma, it'll just bring up 3 little red boxes. Thank you. So in terms of when someone goes to me, kind of what's the problem? Where do we need support on? You immediately go, right, so where are these imminent moves? So at the moment on this example, we've got 4 imminent moves from AMU. That means that those beds are, the patients are either allocated to empty beds or dirty beds, or beds that are being cleaned. And actually, we can get a chivvy on with those 4, as well as all the others that are then going down. And for example, right at the bottom there, we've got 5 allocated to ED to again have that exact same conversation. So if someone goes, we need to offload these 5 ambulances now, where can I support? Well, there's an immediate ask there for nursing transfer team to support with that, as well as potentially the bed cleaning teams. Obviously, a discharge lounge conversation then goes, okay, let's task someone else to go around. We know which wards these are. Have a conversation. Why are they patients not being referred to the discharge lounge? And for those who have been, what support does the discharge lounge need to get those patients back down there and release that capacity on the wards? And then obviously, if there's any delays with porter and bed turnaround team, those are clearly stated as well. Next slide, please, Emma. This is our second dashboard. If you just press right 3 times, Emma, as well, that should just bring up 3 red boxes. Thank you. So again, all of our GP referrals, all of our primary care referrals go via TeleTracking as well. So we can see the breakdown there. We've got 26 in total, and 9 of those have gone via ED. So instantly there's a query there going kind of what are those 9 and should they have gone? So historically, we then look at all of our GP referrals that go via ED, and we go, was that right option to do so? Are we tracking the outcomes of those? Are we to maximize our SDEC unit? We don't, as much as it's called an SDEC unit, we do use it as an assessment area for potential admissions. So even if a patient is potentially for admission, they should go via there. So we need to maximize that space unless they require ED input. So we do manual reviews of those patients as well. We obviously have our current census of all our patients in our SDEC unit broken down by specialty, medical, surgical, frailty, etc. as well. So we can start seeing growing pressure if required there. And there's a common question that I was being asked was, how many beds have ED been given on any day? And often ED will say, we haven't been given any beds, or we haven't been given a few beds, or not many. We can then instantly look at that and go, ED's had 17 green beds, that's 17 completed moves out, and they've got another 5 assigned moves. And you can't see it on this slide, but if you hover over that on the live dashboard, that then gives an indication of who those 17 patients were, and when those patients left as well. So this is quite interactive. But again, just gives an indicator around the flow so far today, and also some of the pressure points regarding primary care and SDEC as well. All this obviously relies on good usage of the system. So it comes back to those original points of you've got to have a system that's easy to use, the clinicians find valuable, and then actually then can be aggregated that data easily to feed up to these sorts of reports. Next slide, please, Emma. And it's the last dashboard that I'll show you, but is more around that historical performance data. So we did a kind of a whole diagnostics piece with our ward managers, team leaders, and coordination center, and some of our lead nurses in SDEC and ED. And we said, kind of, talk to me a bit about TeleTracking, kind of what you want, what you do not want. And we went through a config process with them now to make the system better, in inverted commas. Or more fit for purpose, but ultimately it's then also about feeding back to them regarding some of these KPIs. So we've got to talk a little bit from left to right there. So all of our discharges before 10, before 12, before 3, Our Dropbox performance, which Carl mentioned earlier, which is the number of patients that go via our automated kind of Dropbox feature, 51%. It's not where we want it to be. Our pending and confirmed discharge compliance. So that is, if a patient is being discharged from the organisation, are they being put down as a pending discharge before, or are they being put down as a confirmed discharge before? What we obviously want is that as a higher number as possible. Some patients will just walk out the ward, unfortunately, so it will never be 100%, but actually gives an indicator to the ward teams about their ward performance. Now, this has been integrated into the nursing team's kind of ward KPIs, which has been really, really useful, but probably not as fully as integrated as we want. However, they get this email on a weekly basis on a Monday morning for the previous week. They can then change their filters. They can look back at the last 2 or 3 months. They can share that with their teams. Because what the ward managers were telling us was, we get it, but our teams don't get it. What can you give us to help us communicate that to our teams? So now the ward managers and team leaders forward this onto their teams, but also print it out, put on their ward boards. They also take it into their performance review meetings with the likes of the matrons and other heads of nursing in the organisation as well. And they'll say, our discharges have improved, our time of discharges has improved, or our discharge lounge usage, as you can see in the bottom right hand side there, they now all go via TeleTracking, is on the up, which is positive as well. I think if you press right 3 times, Emma, there should be 3 red boxes maybe. Yeah. You've also got there the kind of a graphical pending, confirmed, and Dropbox compliance as well. So it's nice and easy for teams to be able to work through and see it as well. Next slide, please, Emma. So a bit about the how, which is probably more important than the kind of what we've done. So how we've got to a better state, and how in essence we've got to an earlier discharge profile. So we've moved our discharges before 10, before 12, and before 3 by around 25% improvement. So we moved from around 49% to around, I think, about 57% of our discharges now before 3 o'clock, and similar improvements before 10 and before 12 as well as greater visibility across our coordination centre. So how we've done that is, one, there's been a really strong monthly forum set up with all this, with a strong MDT format. So we've got our kind of IM&T colleagues in there who now very much want to be referred to as digital. So our digital colleagues, our more informatics and analytics team in there as well, who handle our dashboard creation, but also, provide a bit of check and challenge by saying, actually, why don't you start having a look at this instead? For example, we just had our meeting this morning, and they're now bringing data with regards to out of hours moves. That wasn't something we were focused on, but it's actually, how many patients are moving out of hours between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Overnight. That's actually really valuable data that I know the CQC will be interested in as well. We've got nursing representation there from a ward manager perspective, which is really crucial because they live and breathe it and they understand it and they know what works, what doesn't work, and they can quite quickly check and challenge and say, that's a great idea, but it's not going to work. We've got a transformation team there. We've got a TeleTracking representative, which is Dan, who's on the call. So good to see you, Dan. And then myself, another one of the ops team as well, who try and pull some of this stuff together. We have a strong piece regarding performance, but it's mainly looking at those key factors of production that we're looking looking at. We won't kind of go, okay, how many patients waiting admission in ED for the last 3 months. We'll look at some of the specific KPIs regarding Dropbox, confirmed pending discharge lounge usage, and the such like. But mainly the focus is regarding those technical fixes, because ultimately if a system doesn't work for the teams, then it's not viable, but also those process changes to support engagement. I sat down and had one-to-ones with every single ward manager in this organisation. I've done that 3 times now, and team leader with their relevant matron, and that's been the most powerful way to get this messaging out there. There's a bit of hesitancy initially to kind of structure it in that way just because of the time required, but it's absolutely paid dividends the first time we did it, and we've done it then sequentially twice more, and it's a really good way to make sure the matron teams are engaged in that as well. So the one message I have to say is the one-to-one engagement is absolutely crucial, because you can have those conversations, you have those challenging conversations regarding what does or doesn't work or what our expectations are. Then you bring them into a wider forum, and then everyone's singing the same hymn sheet. It doesn't become a whinge forum. It becomes actually, we understand what we're looking at. We understand what we're trying to aim for. It also links into this monthly forum, now links into a wider forum, and they may include like the discharge lounge working group, which is a separate piece. and then also our overall exec-led patient flow forum as well. So we have a deputy chief nurse who leads kind of our ward and board round process, which this feeds obviously directly into, and then we have our chief nurse leads our patient flow forum as well. So it's us understanding kind of where does our structure fit in with the wider governance structure of the organisation. And it was also trying to be clear on what we don't want TeleTracking to do as well. So we've got a patient administration system, many trusts, well, all trusts do, and it's just being very clear around what we want the clinicians to put into our Cerner system and what we want them to put into TeleTracking. And, you know, sometimes the TeleTracking team will say, you know, oh, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And it's like, yeah, some trusts do, but actually, you know, we have separate systems that are doing that relatively well. This is how we want to use it as well. So it was just being very clear that TeleTracking is a patient flow system for us anyway, and the clinical data will go into our Cerner system, but actually all patient moves and all requests for patient moves and finding of kit and finding of patients will go on TeleTracking, and that's how we want to use it. And I put that quote in the team structure, the strategy, not the plan. I'm not quite sure where I got that from, but it's a nice phrase. I really like it because actually if you get the structure right, then almost you don't necessarily need to write a strategic plan because the plan just kind of comes out of having the right structure, and actually every conversation you have is quite productive, and it kind of and you know, reflecting the last 12 months and where we've got in terms of technical fixes, ward engagement, performance and early discharge profile is certainly paid dividends. Next and last slide, please. So that summarizes quite a bit of what we've already done, and you know, there was a lot of technical stuff that we had to work through, and we have been working through over the last 3 or 4 months. A lot of that was in-house work that actually we needed to front up and work a bit more in partnership with TeleTracking on. A lot of that was that ward engagement work that I discussed, and then actually once that's in place, getting that visibility of performance. But in terms of next steps, there's some crucial stuff that we still need to land, and one is regarding that true return on investment that we're getting. Now we understand that we're saving 2.5 bed days every day because we're utilizing Dropbox properly, but actually we really need to articulate that into a more firmer ROI structure. We understand that some of the benefits we're getting regarding better visibility of pending and confirmed discharges, but we need to articulate that to our executive team in a more meaningful way. We've done some really good kind of bottom-up approach, but actually we really need to make sure our executive teams are using this and engaging this in a really meaningful way. And also that integrating so all of our KPIs into our core ward and board process work. There's a whole range of conversations, for example, regarding criteria-led discharge, ward and board rounds, structure, engagement, MDTs at board rounds, for example. And it's just making sure that TeleTracking is being tied into all those conversations, and also making sure that actually when we're having, you know, performance conversations or reviews of wards, actually where does the TeleTracking KPIs fit into that? But yeah, certainly all, you know, in partnership with TeleTracking in the last 12 months, but a lot regarding just how do we structure ourselves properly to get a lot of these things done. That's everything, Emma. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Just to add, I think because, you know, we're really big on ensuring that we understand how the technology can be enabled in organisational development. Everything you said there, Tom, is about what our focus is about, how we support you to have those conversations about how you might structure the organisation, you might make the changes so that we're getting people, process and technology from the outset. Certainly it's a big part of our delivery model. And what you've seen in the stuff that Tom's just shown is some really good examples of how we've kind of focused down on key areas of work, but it's a snapshot of the level of data that you get across the whole of the platform. So when you look at that, there's over 100 different dashboards. It can be really granular data. Some of that data historically captured, some of it totally novel, much of it novel. And so you're able to use data and insight in a way that you wouldn't traditionally be able to drive. So what Tom and the team have done, and he mentioned it slightly, we've got the dashboards that are standard over 100, but they've been really creative. Patrick in particular has kind of made sure that they've tailored and configured those dashboards to the most effective use within the organisation. That can differ between organisations. They may find different things are valued differently, but there is really good sharing. One of the things that we try and do is increase the partnerships working between different organisations, and MCW and Countess and Chester are having some really good conversations around how they can share some of the learning as well.
Thank you so much, Tom and Carl. I'm going to bring these down, but this is an opportunity now really to share some reflections, some burning questions that you each may have. And I have got some questions that I can pull from the chat box because there's been a flurry popping in there. The first one is a real practical one, really, and any of us who've worked in operational roles and are in operational roles, how is it mitigated the patient taking home the tag with them? So is there some sort of device or alert that happens so that it doesn't mean a tag's gone home with a patient? Just a very practical one to start with.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting topic. This is one of the conversations that we're having actually with Tom and team, is that we've got two different options with badge. We have the disposable ones that have a very short lifespan, and so they are designed to go out with the patient, and they don't have to manage the attrition. Or if you've got the ones that have either replacements or they've got 2-year lifespan, then there needs to be really good effective management to do that. But we're exploring ways that we might improve that and that's a really good idea of how we might do that with some form of alert. But there is a need to manage the attrition.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Just in terms of practicality, please, Tom. Yeah.
I was just going to say is one, because every patient is badged, for example, our care of the elderly wards, if a patient walks off care of the elderly ward, an alarm will go off. It's not for every patient. You can slightly nuance it, but in essence saying that if you're potentially a wandering patient, that alarm will go off. So actually it supports the ward teams in just managing that process with patients coming in and out. Some can, some need to be alerted if they do. And the second thing is, if you get the Dropbox performance up to kind of 90% plus, then it tends to be you're not losing any badges and no patients should be walking out. So patients should be, as part of our discharge process, they should go via the discharge lounge, but the discharge lounge team will be putting their badge in that Dropbox on the way out. So no patient should just be wandering out.
Yeah, and then that's helpful because obviously this solution also helps with other issues like patients wandering or going off site, which we do have incidents of working across hospital sites. That's helpful. Thank you. One of the other quite recurrent questions is with regards how the solution links to EPR. And is there kind of that clear alignment, integration to whatever a trusted solution is using from an EPR perspective?
Yeah, that's a really good and really important question. Something that we're constantly just trying to help people understand is that they are a totally separate system. We're focused on the operational logistics data that is captured across the system. The clinical data captured differently and separately in your EPR, but we seamlessly interface and link into any EPR. We're not that some of the EPRs will have a module that just focus on sort of where the bed is across the system, and that can be seen as a bed management module. What this is a comprehensive operational logistics solution that tracks all of those different workflows and where there have been changes to operational change. So as an example, you might look at your imaging requests. So perhaps a patient has been sent for diagnostics from the ward. You'd be able to look at this and there'd be an operational timestamp to say there's been a change in the system, so that you know, has this patient had a request for imaging? Has that been completed? Has it been reported on? So it would give you the operational data that would say, so there has been a change in the system, but the clinical data is still captured in a different system, whether that's a specific diagnostic piece of software or EPR. It pulls out the change so that you're not having to make calls to go and say, where is that information and what status are we in? So you could see at the glance exactly where your status changes happen across the system and what you need to go and follow up on, but we keep them separately.
That's helpful. Thank you. And just with regards also, because obviously, particularly as we're moving much more towards group trust models or where organisations have got multi-sites. So one of the questions is regards, if the patient moved from one site to the other site, would they need a new wristband? Or would they be keeping the same one for those that's got multiple sites?
No, it does tend to change if you've got, because essentially, usually they require a new visit ID, and as a result of the various different reasons, we tend to change the badge for different sites.
Okay, thank you. Please, colleagues, do pop your hands up and ask a question, so I'm not simply reading out from the chat box. Come on and be brave. Victoria, thank you.
I just wanted to ask, you were saying it's linked to EPR. Is there a delay in timing? So is it straight off? If you're late?
It's almost instantaneous. It's seconds if anything. It should change in the system. But it's a relatively straightforward process to interface with all those EPRs. So we've never found that we have an issue with any of the kind of data feeds from those types of systems. Introduce a Michael.
So it is a live data, so to speak.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks.
You're on mute, Emma.
Yeah, Victoria, thank you for that. You were also curious of whether this solution, and Tom, from your experience, changed the role of the site team in any way. So Victoria, is there something specific you wanted to be curious about there?
Yeah, at the moment, a lot of our bed management is via people pulling data and looking across. And I just wondered, if you're having that done via the TeleTracking system, how has that changed with how the site operations team works across with staff colleagues, and if there's any changes at all?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I saw it in the chat. So and as context, we visited Maidstone, Tunbridge Wells actually, and it's quite good the setup the TeleTracking has, where you can go to visit other sites, and they were also tackling a similar query, where basically because their clinical site coordination team no longer have to go round the wards in the same way and bleeping and with notes, they're more computer based, they're far more efficient, but also it's a different role, or it's become a slightly different role, and it's more of it's becoming less clinical. So they're becoming more efficient, but actually there's a bit about working and what actually their role is, and what do they want out their job, and they're clinically trained. Now overnight it's slightly different, just because of the nature of night working. They tend to have a bit more of a clinical role. They tend to be less of a bed specialist. But in ours, we're moving towards the model of having band 3s that do a lot of the bed management type asks with oversight of one clinical site coordinator. And thus they'll be interacting with them and saying kind of that they can do 60% on their own, but they will have several queries, and then the other clinical site coordinator is a bit more live, out and about, and wandering around the wards as well, to try and make sure their clinical skills and their general engagement in the job is kept high, because what we don't want to do is be paying clinical staff to be sitting down at a desk.
So they move more towards more clinical role rather than but they're doing admin at the minute.
Yeah, in essence, because of the role of TeleTracking is there's less data capture required because the system does it for you, and so therefore we're moving towards more administrative roles, and the clinical site coordination team have to change because of that.
Thanks.
Thank you, that's helpful. Thank you, Victoria, great questions. Nina, over to you, please.
You asked us to be curious, so I'm going to get a challenge question really. I can see how this works in physical health, and having worked in an A&E department, I can see the importance and value of it. I now work in a mental health trust. Have you done any work in mental health trust? Because obviously flow is very different, no less challenging, but very, very different to acute physical health flow.
Yeah, it's a really good question. It's something we're currently absolutely looking at. We do have it in a slightly different functional role in the US, but we've got a lot of the kind of offers across a whole much broader system. We're actually looking at that at the moment. We totally get the fact is the pressure isn't the same in terms of the immediate urgent care pressure, and what the basic foundational use of the system is absolutely applicable. What we're looking at is how do we refine that and make sure that's a clear offer that adds value for a mental health provider, and we're in the process of doing that, and that should be ready relatively soon.
We'll watch that space. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Next week, if you want to call me.
Well, I mean, there is something about actually speaking with colleagues who are in these provider trusts, because it is about whatever solutions are produced, are they the right ones? Does it actually meet the people who are actually physically doing the roles day in, day out? So there may be something around actually exploring that with relevant operational managers and leads in, for example, mental health, same as community health trusts and others. So yeah, great question. Thank you, Nina. I think one thing that is very resonant with most systems you introduce, and Tom, you referred to it as in team is the strategy, not the plan. And a lot does it anchor back to teamwork and actually having an inclusive, diverse team in place. But systems like this are reliant on people inputting and keeping them up to date. Is there any kind of nuggets, learning or key interventions you've done to change those behaviours? particularly across the trust. So all of a sudden, it can be used for real-time bed management because people are actively using it. But what steps did you take to get them actively using it? Because it's a very different way of working, isn't it?
Just before I let Tom jump in, just what I would say is we work particularly hard at making sure the adoption is relatively intuitive. So it's relatively light touch where we're capturing data by different mechanisms that will automate process or improve it. So if you have an existing system, we're trying to map to that process where it's already effective, or maybe streamline and improve it slightly, but give you the digital version that you can actually use to capture that data more effectively in a way that you would all traditionally capture them. So it's not no more time. It is always looking at either improvement of the process or improvement of that time around that's required. So as an example, you kind of ward-based conversations at board round. You know, all of that information and the changes that happen with those patients can be captured and updated in real time at the board round. The rest of the processes around like patient moves, transport across the hospital, whatever that may be, bed cleaning, they're all kind of captured in either an automated way or on a smartphone that you can kind of just make a small change and it will feed that information back to the system. But Tom, I'll let you talk about the practical side.
Yeah, and I'll echo regarding kind of board around and ward around. So actually, you know, what are your current processes and how do we, you know, how can you very easily link in with the current system? What I would say is that obviously the integration is vital into the likes of Cerner and PAS. We want to reduce clicks. So actually, let's not put a bed request into your Cerner, a bed request into TeleTracking. Let's, you know, do it once and then it integrates across. Let's make sure that the organization is clear that it's not for us anyway, it's not a clinical system, it's a patient flow system, so let's not put clinical data in there, and if we do, let's make sure it's integrated across from Cerner, so it's not multiple clicks. Let's be clear that, you know, what's working on some wards do a really good job with their ward clerks putting in some of the data and using it because it's very user friendly, so it doesn't rely on the nursing teams. So actually we then got 2 wards to go around all the other wards with their ward clerks and go, actually, you know, let's talk to every ward clerk in the organization and get them up to speed. We've got discharge coordinators on wards who handle a lot of the IDT or pathway 1, 2, 3 discharges. So actually what's their role within that as well. So it's really utilized the MDT, but also it comes down to those the 2 things of one, you know, listening to your staff and going, what is or isn't working for you. Sometimes data was being collected, we weren't using it, they weren't using it. Why are we collecting it? So that was part of this piece we went through 12 months ago where we actually pulled some of these data points out. But also saying, you know, actually some of this stuff is your job and you've got to get this right. We're going to record the data and we're going to come back to you. So do you understand it? Does it work for you? And then we're going to come back to you in, you know, 6 weeks time and feedback to what we think the data points are. So there's a bit around holding to account as well.
Thank you. So what I heard there was involving them in further shaping it, but also then recognising each other's role in it, which comes back to the responsibility, accountability aspect in it, doesn't it? I think that is one of the key things introducing innovative solutions is actually people feel like they're involved in it from the very beginning rather than it's just done to or given to them. And I know from some of the learning we've had in the other lunch and learn sessions with NHS trusts and teletracking, that is a real key fundamental aspect of how you approach your partnership and working together. So it's great to hear that that's actually actively played out, and it's some of the things, Tom, that you and colleagues took steps to do in Countess of Chester. So thank you for that. Are there any other questions or curiosities from anywhere? We've had comments with regards to the dashboards and actually whether those are standard ones, whether you've co-created some new ones, or was it just slicing, dicing data? So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but before you do, Adrian, do you want to come in, please?
Thank you. Sorry, I don't have a camera today. Just the obvious question is, you mentioned, Tom, about return on investment. Each hospital is going to be different size and it's going to have to be bespoke. Is there a formula that says this many beds, that's your rough cost? Because that would be really helpful for all of us. If you said it's £1 a bed per year, then Tom mentioned 500 beds, it's £500. We can all work upwards or downwards from there. Or is it not that simple? Because that's the obvious question, isn't it? We're saving bed days. We might be making efficiencies elsewhere, but SATH in particular are on the naughty step financially. Lots of other trusts are in a similar position, and I'm not aware of a single NHS area that is flush with money. So money is really important, and spending every penny sensibly is what we have to do. So how's it work out, the finances on this?
Yeah, from our perspective, we do actually do by a bed per bed pricing structure. It all depends on what package you would take and other challenges within the organisation. So it's a conversation that we tend to have very early on to make sure you understand what your needs are and we understand those, and then we can help shape that package. So more than happy to help if there's any opportunity to do that. I think the return on the investment, what we constantly try and do is look to identify potential areas to support you with the business case development for at least a 4 times return on investment. If you think about all the areas where loss to capacity ends up having further impact within the system, so whether that's outsourcing additional elective activity, potential challenges at the front door, performance, things, there is a range of different potential opportunities to improve your capacity and then improve the pressures along a much broader system. So we help with the development of that business case and the capture of all those potential areas of return on investment.
That's great, thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful, Carl. And even if it is just to give someone initial kind of ballpark, or at least something of a starting point, because I think Adrian does make a good point, and that's the kind of getting over the first hurdle and getting the ears pricked up of relevant people in an organisation. So I think that reach out would be helpful, Carl.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that point, because one of the things we're starting to recognise now is one of the hardest pressures that we must all overcome when we're on that kind of working within the hospital is that lifting your head out of that space is usually the biggest challenge, because you're constantly consumed by the day-to-day. The initial value can be returned very, very quickly. We look at around 6 months, 12 months max to try and get you that initial 4 times return on investment. But if you think then about how much potential that then arises in the system, if you can give back time, you could either take it out of the system and you could save it as cost savings, or you can keep it in and reallocate it. So what we always advise is saying, how do you reallocate that additional capacity to continue to build on it, give your staff the time to engage with further change that might yield more significant benefits over time. So it really starts to compound and become a virtuous circle of kind of reinforcing really good behaviours around change and improvement. And that becomes then endless over the life of the contract, that you can continue to reinvest that time and improve and deliver further returns.
Thank you for that. We are coming to a close, and I do just want to say a massive thank you to both Tom and Carl for sharing their partnership work across the organisation, and particularly around some of the interventions that they've introduced and the real change with regards capacity management, but also supporting patient flow. So can I just give a thank you to Tom and to Carl with some thumbs up. Just for clarity, we will be sharing the slides from today's session. So there'll be a members email going out within the next few days that will have all the slides attached, and we'll also do a link to the recording as well. So anyone who wants further information, what will be in there as well is contact details for both Tom and Carl. So you can follow up any further conversations, or if you just got another burning question you've thought of when we finish, or you just want to learn a little bit more, then you will be able to get in touch with both Tom and Carl for that. And I know that some trusts have also been supporting some visits as well, not lining you up for lots of visit there, Tom, but some people like to just physically go and see and hear and meet with people. So thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for your time for this during this lunch and learn session. We hope you have a great rest of the day, and if there's anything we can help with in between, or you want some more information, please do not hesitate to get in touch with us. But thank you once again, and thank you to Tom and Carl. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy. Have the rest of your day. Thank you,
Thanks,
everybody.
bye.
Take care. Bye.